Experimental life and the history of exploration of life. We live in a memory experiment on the surface of the Earth, monitored by the underground high-tech world. For millennia not a single ego has died, thanks to timely piecemeal rejuvenating brain surgery and high-tech security network. Guided by artificial intelligence, ion-powered flying robots tirelessly watch over our endless lives. In the event of unplanned death, the pulse sensor sounds an alarm and sends the GPS signal from the implanted Scopal safety computer to the flying robot. Then you have to be quick. Within minutes, the victim must be found, revived with oxygen-rich blood, or flown lifeless into the Holden, Space 0G. They're in containers, protected from radiation, magnetic fields, and gravity. You can be stored lifeless for centuries without biologically changing or aging. If no body parts with the same K-point factor are available for the victim, special apparatus automatically provide cloned body parts. Responsible for all medical actions are surgical machines controlled by artificial intelligence, which can perform true miracles using lasers and the laser biomerging method. Resuscitation is done with transfusions of K-point factor matching oxygenated blood via U blood vessels. You wake up from the anesthetic completely healed and think you only fell asleep for a short time. Then you can go on with your life without any disturbing side effects. Long before the option of endless life, people discovered the sensational effectiveness of transfusing K-point factor matched, oxygenated blood directly from animal donors. This bodily fluid contains the quality of life. After infection, poisoning, blood loss, and death experience, these transfusions helped within minutes and reliably, without any undesirable side effects. The plus of the transfused life also includes an extra portion of intact immune system, which helps the weakened victim to recover quickly. Provided the appropriate size and K-point factor match, a problem-free compatibility was observed in the transplantation of organs and body parts from almost all mammalian species. The knowledge of problem-free resuscitation with oxygen-rich blood and the discovery in Space 0G, the Holden, the lifeless storage without biological change formed the basis for the research to live endlessly. When doing research in a team using Holden, colleagues don't age while waiting for results. Using the Holden tactic, statistical age-related brain death in mammals was observed at about 108 years. Then a vein bursts in the temple area and is responsible for natural death. By the way, the heart could pump healthy blood for 200 years. 0G in space allowed a surgery with no time limit. The lifeless body did not change biologically, it only had to be revived for the wound to heal. Conventional attempts to replace the ruptured vein in the temple area adversely affected the test animal's quality of life. Until accidentally during laser cutting experiments, laser biomerging was discovered, which would then become the only successful method in brain surgery. Limbs that had been severed by a laser could be laser merged back together. The cutting surfaces were precisely positioned, briefly and slightly pressed together. At the same time, laser must cut along the cut surfaces in less than a second. Organs, muscles, blood vessels, nerves grow together immediately. Bones are firm after 30 minutes. There were problems with the deadly space warp that arose when the laser was operating. Ion irradiation averted this danger. The U-blood container was developed to simplify blood transfusions. After bottling this blood, an unfavorable time dependency in the revitalizing effect quickly became apparent. Also, the Space 0G Holden didn't bring satisfactory benefits in storing this blood. After donation, about a third of the effectiveness remains after 10 minutes. Continuous advances in information technology have given rise to robots, cyborgs, and artificial intelligence. Inevitable giant growth observed in all living beings in Space 0G was used for giant plants. Some examples: bananas, kiwi, and the corn come from 0G manipulated seeds. Various giant organs were combined in special cyborg machines to gain higher yields. Huge lungs provided enough oxygen-rich blood. Giant salivary glands supplied the surgical cleaning fluid cleanse, which made symptom-free brain surgery possible. Basic questions about the localization and quality of the ego consciousness were clarified with animal experiments and training. After brain transplants with laser biomerging, only the body with the trained brain was able to show the dressage performance. The untrained brain on a trained body behaved just as naively as before the exchange. It was assumed that the memory of everyday life mainly forms the ego. At the start of the bit-by-bit brain rejuvenation trials, the test animals exhibited equally insane behavior. The desired rejuvenation success was only brought about by the brain parts that had grown without feedback. To do this, the donor animal had to grow from the embryo to the transplantable size in deep anesthesia and quiet rooms, artificially fed. With this trick, it seemed like the brain rejuvenating transplants would work. But after weeks of normal behavior, nervous tics, such as compulsive head shaking, were observed in the test animals. Follow-up examinations showed that, about 14 days after the rejuvenation surgery, small tumors had grown in the brain on the surface of all laser incisions. From day 22, the size of the tumors began to cause behavioral problems. A brain treatment was developed against this. Every 14 to 21 days, all laser incisions in the brain had to be repeated, which dissolved the tumors in order to be able to continue the brain rejuvenation without further behavioral disturbances. It was important for the option endless life surgery to explore whether all parts of the brain are replaceable. How much brain per stage of rejuvenation and how long to pause before the next transplantation of a feedback-free brain part, of course without loss of ego consciousness. Ideally, the patient should not notice this brain enhancement. The stages of rejuvenation remained unchanged for years. Old and young parts of the brain live together in everyday life. During this time the ego consciousness transmission takes place imperceptibly. Sometime after about 90 years the whole brain was replaced. It was interesting that the test animals still mastered their training. The orangutan with a completely rejuvenated brain prepares its beloved daily coffee without being taught this technique again. His day-to-day feedback was sufficient for the transference of ego consciousness to the younger parts of the brain. Actually, the ego is basically just the memory of everyday life, and living endlessly works because nature had integrated forgetfulness into consciousness. After the fortunate brain enhancement on the orangutan, which had taken place thousands of years ago, the option of endless life surgery was successfully carried out on humans. The lack of the necessary technology at that time made it necessary to keep it secret. It was clear that not everyone could be guaranteed timely access to rejuvenation. As an alternative to the belief in rebirth that was common at the time, it was offered to fly as many people as possible into space, into the Holden, into the inanimate storage at 0G. Then it took several decades for the realization of robotic modules with artificial intelligence for the option endless life. While the modules reproduced independently, humans controlled their products. Centuries later, all the people from Space 0G were back on Earth. The return flight and resuscitation with oxygen-rich blood worked fully automatically. No one believed they had camped lifeless for so long in the Holden. Everyone was convinced that they had only fallen asleep for a short time. Thanks to the safety network and the option of endless life surgery, they are all still alive today. At that time widespread many old persons needed fast rejuvenating brain exchange. It was known that fast brain enhancement causes insecurity and disorientation. They went to the limits without a security computer scopal implant and a recall program. Nevertheless, the ego of the elders could be preserved. The people could speak and walk independently. They were insecure, disoriented and anxious. Everything normalized with care and training. Alzheimer's was their unofficial term. This stands for all, zero and Heimer. Zero represents the awkwardness. Quality of endless life surgery and ego transmission have always been checked with memory tests. When the worldwide guarantee option endless life was realized for everyone, the artificial intelligence world computer was commissioned to carry out a final experiment. For this on the Earth's surface should be kept secret, the guarantee option endless life, and the underground high-tech world that observes everything. A cyborg society with its own artificial intelligence forms the backbone of the test. Equipped with fake historical technology literature, made curious about the end result. Above us the lie in space, young, dynamic, scary. Artificially staged with special effects on huge high-tech LCD screens in space. Space had to be reconquered with unfavorable rockets, the easy way was sabotaged by remote control. And lifeless storage at 0G without aging had to remain stubbornly undetected. Even medicine should not find the easy way. In order to hide the panacea of oxygen-rich blood transfusions, historical literature only had to agree with its critics. Also secret wishful thinking of screenwriters of TV hospital series and pharmacy became prepared reality. Underground surgical machines implanted ancient and sickly irradiated organs in cyborg patients, who were sent to the surface via elevator for the experiment. Classical medicine kept getting new diseases without knowing their true genesis. Their clumsy, case-by-case treatment successes in vaccination therapies were then deceptively confirmed by clone cyborg devils. As if that wasn't enough. On top of the accidents, the memory experiment allowed for an unnatural amount of crime and wars. Victims and perpetrators were and are cyborg devils. But that hardly makes up for the bad memories. The aim of these stress tests was to determine the quality of the memory of high-tech knowledge. Refreshed during surprising high-tech contacts, the subjects soon forgot everything in everyday life. Artificial high-tech aids were used, such as dreams and recall, which were sent directly to the brain via scopal. Conclusion: without recall and notes, it was impossible to retain high-tech knowledge on the surface of the Earth, but the ego transmission worked. World Computer Artificial Intelligence now recognized statistically relevant the low value of the offered ego enhancements. Option endless life ego transfer works imperceptibly and is quite enough. Now, at last, society has been freed from useless therapy suggestions and is ready for a paradisiacal future.